So I'd like to show you how to do the typography for the hot air balloons. So you'll need this little grungy texture. So go ahead and open that up here in Adobe Photoshop. And we're going to put some typography over here. So hopefully you've brought out your guides and kind of set a margin for yourself. And I'm going to go to the type tool and I'm just going to click and drag a text box, and I'll just type out hot air balloons rock, and I'll select all that text and I'll select the point size, the sizing. Let's just make it a little bit larger here. Try to get balloon, hot air and balloons all on separate lines. Now I want to center it. Let's see if we can get balloons out to the side. I'm going to open the type palette with Command T. Thought I could. There it is. And I'm going to choose the flyout and do all caps. Let's do all caps on all of it here. All caps. And then I have to reduce the size. I want to get balloons on one line. And let's see if there's Helvetica. Helvetica Heavy. Let's see if I can find maybe bold extended for the balloons. Okay, I'm going to reduce the font size for balloons to get it on one line here, and I'm going to increase the size of hot air, get that close to the margins here, something like that. I'm going to select rock, and I'm going to increase the size here so that goes out to the margins. Like that. Now I'll select all of it. I'm going to reduce its line spacing. Adobe calls it leading. So we're going to increase the line spacing. It's hard to see, but it looks like balloons is in a good spot. So now I'm going to select just the word rock. Get that in a good even space here. Let me get balloons with some good spacing. Okay, so that has some pretty good spacing. I'm going to select all that text again, and I don't want it that hot pink, so I'm going to let me get that blue here, and I should be able to hit either Option Delete or Command Delete. If I hit Command, it does the background. If I do Option Delete, it does the foreground. There's a nice blue color here. This would be a good opportunity to hit Save. Now we want to get selection from this grungy texture. So let's use the eyedropper. Shortcut is I for the eyedropper, and I'm going to choose this black. Then we're going to go to Select Color Range, and we're going to go to Sampled Colors here. So then we can change how much of that we're going to grab with the fuzziness factor. So I'm going to try maybe right around 88 and see what happens. So this looks like a pretty good selection. Now to move this selection over here, I don't want to move the image. I don't want to move that whole texture. If I want to move the whole thing, I use the Move tool. But if I just want to move the selection, I would use the Marquee tool. And I'll put the mouse right inside the selection, and whoops, it didn't go. So let me try again here. Oops, still didn't go. So for some reason my selection is not going the way that I want. See, now when it lights up with that selection, should be able to drag the selection over there now. So for some unusual reason it wasn't moving quite the way I want. So now I'm going to put some of this texture on top of the text, and I'm going to make a layer mask. And what it did was the exact opposite of what I wanted. So let me undo that. I'm going to invert my selection. So to invert the selection is Control, Shift, and the letter I. So now my selection is inverted. Now let me make a mask. And that did what I was hoping for, except it didn't get the inside of that black. So I'm going to undo that, and I'm going to deselect. I'm going to go back here, and I was wondering what was going on. None of this black inside here is selected. So I want to make sure that all this is selected here. So let me just try this again, and I'm going to take my fuzziness factor up higher and see if I can get that middle part. Okay, so now, for some reason, the sampled color is not getting as much as I want, so I'm just going to go to shadows here, and it looks like I got a lot of that here, and I've got a pretty good selection. Now I do have that middle part. This is my first time to start using this version of Photoshop. This is the Creative Cloud version of Photoshop, and you guys are working on the CS6. They're virtually the same. Photoshop has not changed much in 5 or 10 years, but this new version here might be the reason why I'm not getting that selection with the sampled colors like I'm expecting. So now I'm going to go here, and now I'm going to do my mask like that, and it did the exact opposite that I want. So I'll hit Command Shift and the letter I to invert my selection. Let me zoom out so you can see. This is the selection all around that way. I'll hit Command Shift I so you can see the other way. Now it's on the inside of this. Now it's on the outside. So now I'll do a mask, and that looks pretty good on that text. Kind of grunged out that text. Something else you can do, instead of just doing a mask and having it chop out, you can actually paint with that texture to be kind of a stencil. So let me, I want to do this thing where I'm going to go to my most bottom layer here, just below the clouds, and I'm going to fill this one with white. So I'm going to go to my default colors, black and white here, and I'm going to fill with white just so we can see that texture a little bit better. Now I'll go back to my texture selection, and I'll go to the marquee tool. Shortcut for that was M, and I'm going to take my texture back up into here, and then I'm going to just kind of see if I can get some more noise cut into these letters here. And now I'm just going to just use a straight brush. Oops. I need to invert my selection so I can paint what I want here. Whoops. I thought I was doing a mask, but I am. Okay, I'll go back up here. Now let me paint here. I'll invert my selection. Now let me try. Okay, there it goes. I was mixed up on what direction I was going. And you want to add some noise here, but be careful not to make your text completely unreadable. You might get, and I know I do, sometimes you might get a little mixed up on what whether you should be painting with black or white. Right now I'm painting with black on the stencil on a layer mask, and sometimes it gets confusing on which one you should do. So let me kind of move this away, move my stencil over here. So that looks pretty good. I need to put a little noise on the words balloon. I didn't want to cut into the, make my brush size a little smaller. I didn't want to cut into the hot anymore. So something like that, that's looking pretty good for the lettering. So now let's just use it as a straight stencil. So I'm going to go bring it back in here, and I'm going to go to the top of the words rock here, and I'm going to put another layer on top, and I'll just call this light blue text, and I'm going to pick a light blue out of this background, maybe that one here. And now I'm just going to just not use a mask at all, just paint. And I wanted to paint just on the letters. So I need to figure that out here real fast. Let me see what I need to do to make that happen. Obviously I can make my brush the hardness. I can make my brush hardness a little bit more and just paint on the part of the letter that I want. And I'm going to move my texture up so I can have a little noise down here. Paint right here. Okay. And if it overlaps some of the letter, that's okay. And if you accidentally deselect it, you can always hit undo. Let's see what's going to happen here when I paint here. Okay, that's exactly what I wanted. Something like that. This in there. Now I'm going to deselect it just so you can see what's going on. Do you see what I'm doing with that text? Just doing some grungy texture. And then something else I want to do is I'll take this texture, take it back over here, and I'm going to put it at the edge of where it's transitioning right here. And then I'm going to paint maybe that light blue. Just see what it looks like here. Paint that light blue into here. It's not bad. And then I'm going to take a very, very soft brush, and I'm going to click here, hold shift and click here, and that was not exactly what I wanted. I'm going to do that with the eraser. I'll click here with a very soft eraser brush and do that. So just so it kind of blends in to there. Now I'm going to hit deselect just so I can see my little splack. That looks nice. So now I'm going to go to my clouds layer. I'm going to use layer mask, and I'm going to use gradation, and I'm going to try to gradate a transition from this into this white here. So let's give that a try here. Like that. That's pretty good, except I did the exact opposite. No big deal. Invert it. So now I have that. But it did mess up my transition that I had down here for that light blue. No big deal. We can just repaint that in. Use an eyedropper, select that blue. Make sure you're on that layer. Highlight that blue. Take a brush. Just kind of paint that in. Actually, that looks pretty good. And if you want to change, you can look at some of your brushes. Maybe an art brush might even be good on that. That looks pretty good to me. But an art brush to kind of give that transition a nice look. Oh, that's a new feature for this version of Photoshop. It moves the texture, kind of rotates the texture around as you click on it. That's new for this version. And so that's not bad. And you need to put probably a little bit more text there at the bottom. Let's look at the example. Balloon Festival. We can collapse some of these. Just move these around. Let's see, what do we do? Balloon Fest, March 27th. Except we'll put the current year. They like this design, so they want you to do it again. So let's try just a whole nother text box. Balloon Fest, March 12th, 2014. We're doing this way in advance. Let's size it down. I'm going to size it just a little bit smaller than it needs to because I want to make Fest bold. Well, this is a different font. You probably want to keep your fonts consistent. So let's try to find that other one here. Balloon Fest. Let's do maybe a black. Too big. Let's just try a bold. Maybe a little better. Try to get this out to its margin. Here too. And I think it looks good, except for that text is probably a little bit too light. So let's make it a little bit darker if we can. Let's try that. And I think I've showed you everything on this here. And the way I just removed all those tools here, I just hit tab and you can see things without all the toolbars in the way. So that's this project, the hot air balloons project. Make sure that whenever you save this, save it using the naming convention and save it right into your hot air balloons file. And I'm just going to do straight save instead of save as, and it'll just save right over it, and that's it.